Most Switch owners seem to be pretty excited about Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity popping up out of nowhere, because even though it may not technically be a first-party title of the same magnitude as a sequel to Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild would have been, it's still nice to know that we're at least going to be getting one noteworthy original game before the end of the year. However, due to the fact this game runs on the same engine as all the other Warriors games, non-Japanese Persona fans are ready to riot in the streets since we've still yet to see Persona 5 Warriors, aka Persona 5 Scramble, get an international release, even though the core game's 100% finished and ready to go. But while I would definitely agree that it's kinda lame, I'm still not gonna sweat it, because at the end of the day, I'll bet my stupid-ass son's college savings fund that Persona 5 Scramble's definitely gonna get an international release on the PS4 as well as the Nintendo Switch. So sit back in your Uncle Scotty's recliner, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, the world's most average-sized man, Cameron all one word, to tell you why Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is getting an international release before Persona 5 Scramble, and why that doesn't mean we're not gonna get Persona 5 Scramble. Alright, so I know that it's frustrating that Persona 5 Scramble's been out since February of 2020 in Japan when we're somehow getting what's in some ways a sequel before it, so it can certainly feel like they just gave up on localizing the game altogether, especially when the game didn't even sell all that well in Japan in the first place. But even if the amount of effort they put into this wasn't worth the profits of what the game produced in Japan, which I don't even think is the case anyway, it'd still certainly be worth the effort to simply localize the game now that all the developing, coding, and all that malarkey's already done, especially when most games usually make way more money internationally, which I'd imagine to be the case with Scramble given that Persona's popularity's higher now than it's ever been before. And I mean, Tecmo Koei even flat out said themselves in July of 2020 that Persona 5 Scramble's coming to North America and Europe by the end of the fiscal year, which would be March of 2021, so there's really nothing more to say on the matter than that. However, the main question now is just why the frig this game's taken so long in the first place. Well, because first of all, let's not forget that the Japanese release of Persona 5 Scramble was in late February 2020, which was just after the PBR virus shut the entire country of Japan down, and right before the rest of the world followed suit. And I know that if Atlus weren't dinguses and just did all the translations and voiceover so that this game would have had a worldwide release, and none of this would have been a problem in the first place, but the fact is that they just hadn't learned this lesson yet at the time, so with the English team being busy localizing the dialogue and recording all the voiceovers for Persona 5 Royal anyway, they probably never even had a good chance to get cracking on Scramble at all. Maybe Atlus keeping games in Japan for a while, because their games usually cost about $30 more over there, and since the English versions usually come with Japanese voice options anyway, Japanese players could just buy the American or European versions digitally, or it could just have to do with the fact that Atlus usually does a really good job with their voice acting, at least in my opinion anyway. But regardless of why they took so long to localize their games in the past though, it doesn't really matter anymore, because thankfully Atlus seems to have gotten with the program now that Shin Megami Tensei 5 is getting a worldwide release on the same day. But unfortunately for Persona 5 Scramble, the game was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, so we're just gonna have to wait a little bit longer than we probably would have otherwise. And I know you might be thinking that the pandemic's a poor excuse for English voice actors to not be working on the game, even though countless anime like My Hero and JoJo halted their English localizations for a while, because after all, Hyrule Warriors also has, you know, English voice actors, so if they could work on a Zelda game, then why not Persona? And well, first of all, they're two completely different teams of voice actors, and even though I haven't played Age of Calamity at all, I've played enough of the Persona 5 Scramble demo to know that the game's clearly gonna have like 50 times more dialogue, just like how any other Persona game would in comparison to any other Zelda game. But even if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't be surprised one bit if Tecmo Koei decided to prioritize a Legend of Zelda game that'd be new for the entire world over localizing a Persona game, especially when the Zelda game will probably sell way better than normal, given that the Switch doesn't really have a whole lot else going on for the holiday season. And I'm sure that because the Switch doesn't have a whole lot else going on, Nintendo's probably riding Tecmo Koei's ass to make sure that the game comes out by the end of 2020. In fact, this might be crazy speculation, but it wouldn't surprise me if Nintendo demanded that Persona 5 Royal not come out anywhere near the same time as Hyrule Warriors, given how similar the two games are, especially if it might slow the development process down a little bit. But then again, Persona 5 Scramble is also going to be on PlayStation, and Sony might want the game to come to North America as soon as possible, but honestly, I'd bet they're far more concerned with the PS5 right now to try and rush Tecmo Koei, especially when I'm sure they'd probably understand that a canon prequel to Breath of the Wild during the holiday season with like no other first-party Nintendo games to compete with is probably going to sell out the ass on the Switch. As far as the localization itself goes, though, it wouldn't surprise me if Atlus is already done with all the script writing, voiceovers, and all that, but I'd bet money that they've at least started it, even though they're probably busy with Shin Megami Tensei's 3 and 5 as well. All I know is that games aren't usually released the second they're finished, and that more often than not, they're usually strategically placed in launch windows ahead of time. So with Hyrule Warriors probably wanting some time to shine for a little while, I'd probably guess that Persona 5 Scramble won't come out till February or March of 2021 like Tecmo Koei told us in July, which might seem crazy to think that we're not going to get it till the game's already been out for a full year in Japan, but when you consider that's about how long we used to have to wait for these games not all that many years ago, I'd say that it's really not that big a deal considering all the factors I mentioned like the pandemic. So even though it would have been nice to get this game a little bit sooner, Tecmo Koei already confirmed that it's coming, which should have been obvious given how much money they'd stand to make by simply recording a few voiceovers. So I think we should all just be patient and not take any kind of frustrations out on Hyrule Warriors, because even though I didn't care to play the first one, I'm honestly pretty excited for Age of Calamity as well as Persona 5 Scramble, and in case you didn't know, it's completely okay to enjoy both, regardless of whether or not one makes us wait a little bit longer for the other. But anyway, what do you think? Is Hyrule Warriors making Persona 5 Scramble take the back seat for a little while, or do you think that Atlus just doesn't care about their non-Japanese fans? And even beyond that, how do you feel about Age of Calamity? Either way, let me know what you think down in the comments below, and as always, I'll try my goddamnedest to respond to everybody at some point. But let me tell you, if there's two people who deserve their own spin-offs that use the Dynasty Warriors engine, then it would definitely be today's patrons of the day, Aksha and Israel Basarios. If you want to be badasses like these two, then consider supporting FU Game Crew on Patreon for loot boxes and silly rewards in the mail. Send pictures or videos of you rocking merch if you want to make cameos in my videos, and follow me on Twitch if you ever want to hang out whenever I play video games sometimes. My name's Cameron, all one word, and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.